You're on mute. Can you get them to unmute your device?
Good morning.
There you are. Good morning. Would you introduce yourself? Tell us your name and DOC number.
My name is Jayson Lee Figueroa, DOC 407155. Merry Christmas.
So, Merry Christmas. Thank you. What was the DOC number again?
It's 407515.
Okay, yes, that's right. Mr. Figueroa, you're classified as a third felony offender. You're currently serving an 18-year sentence as a habitual offender for obstruction of justice. You were sentenced in St. Tammany on November 7th, 2022. Your parole eligibility date has passed. It was August 14th, 2023. You don't earn good time, so your full term date is February 14th, 2037. Does all that sound right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Your case has been assigned to Mrs. Jackson. Would you answer her questions?
Good morning.
Good morning, ma'am. God bless you this morning.
How old are you, Mr. Figueroa?
I'm 45.
And you're serving an 18-year sentence for obstruction of justice, is that correct?
To be honest, it's attempt to obstruct, and it's being appealed as we speak. I should have never been sentenced. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
And I show that you've been incarcerated approximately 4 years, 7 months.
Yes, ma'am.
What are your two other prior convictions, Mr. Figueroa?
Second-degree rape and carnal knowledge of a 16-year-old.
Are those your prior felony convictions?
Oh, you're saying what I had
Yeah.
before was
Yeah, you're a third felony offender, counting the one you're serving time for. So that means you have you had a simple robbery.
oh yes, ma'am. Simple robbery and distribution. A distribution charge.
So, Ms. Figueroa, tell us what happened in the attempted obstruction of justice.
Ma'am, I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Tell me
TV.
what happened in the attempted obstruction case.
Oh, basically, I called my mom on the phone and I told my mom that I was incarcerated for an incident that I didn't do. And they say that I tried to obstruct justice, and I was found not guilty for obstruction of justice and found guilty of an attempt.
Well, that's okay. Well, let me back up. There were two runaway juveniles, one 17 and one 16. You were in a photograph with both of those girls. When the police asked you about the girls, where they were, what you knew about the girls, you told them that you didn't know the girls. And then when you were presented information about the photographs they had of you with those girls, then you said that you picked them up and drove them to Bourbon Street. Correct?
No, ma'am. All I remember is giving them a ride somewhere.
Well, no, sir. Did you tell the police that you knew nothing about either of those girls?
Yes, ma'am.
But when they showed you the photographs, then you said you dropped them off on Bourbon Street. Is that correct?
I remember dropping them off in New Orleans.
Ms. Figueroa, you can play games all you want.
I'm not playing any games. I'm just telling you what I remember. You asked me questions that happened 5 years ago.
That you dropped them off after they showed you photographs, after you had denied even having seen or known them. correct?
Correct. Yes,
And
ma'am.
at that point, they were trying to find the girls because they were runaways, their parents were worried, and they asked you to provide some additional information, and you refused to give them information. And then later, one of the girls was found in a motel room. And she told the police that you had provided her with a number of drugs, and that while she was drugged, you raped her, and that you were selling her to other men for them to have sex with her. And so as a consequence of that, you have pending charges of sex trafficking, second-degree rape, and carnal knowledge. And those charges are set for trial on March the 3rd of next year. Is that correct, that you have those charges pending and they are set for trial on March the 3rd of next year?
Yes, ma'am. I've been sitting in jail 5 years for charges I didn't commit. We had a DNA test, and for the past 5 years, he's considered.
Sir, I'm
Well,
not.
you're reading a police report that's falsified, and you're making me sound like I'm this monster. I didn't rape anybody. I didn't sell anybody for drugs, and I never gave anybody no drugs. I gave somebody a ride from point A to point B, and I've been punished for the past 5 years, guilty until proven innocent, when there's proof that I'm innocent. And when I go to court this month or in February, they're gonna throw the charges out. This is not right.
Good, that's when you deal with it.
Right, that's when you deal with.
I mean, so it
you're-
making me sound like I'm a monster,
sir.
saying that I said this and I said.
Sir, you were convicted of attempted obstruction of justice. You had a trial. A jury listened to the evidence and they found attempted obstruction. They didn't find you not guilty. They found you guilty of a lesser offense, and you were sentenced to 18 years in prison. And you are here today for a parole. You are asking this board to grant you early release. And you are on mute.
I'm sorry, ma'am. Can you hear us?
Can hear you now.
All right, we apologize. We don't know what's going on with the technical difficulties. But
You
yes,
went
ma'am. Yes,
You
ma'am.
went to trial, you were found guilty of attempted obstruction, and you received an 18-year sentence, correct? You were treated as a habitual offender, and you received an 18-year sentence. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. 18 years for a nonviolent charge. Correct.
Again. Why should we let you out of jail, Mr. Pickford?
First of all, I learned my lesson. Never again
What lesson did you learn?
to just not give anybody a ride from point A to point B.
Only thing you learned?
And that my fall partner that was incarcerated with me, he was younger than me. I had my own construction company. He lived with me for a little while. And at the end of the day, I shouldn't mix I shouldn't allow people that work with me stay with me. I mean, 5 years in prison is a long time for something you didn't do, but I've learned that you can't trust anybody. You can't just show love to everybody. It's not right. Because this is what happens. You know, my mom used to tell me all the time, if you can't be nice to everybody, it bites you on the ass. Here I am 5 years later. I've learned my lesson. They said that I attempted to obstruct because I called my mom on the phone and I told her the truth about the matter, never hiding the matter.
Figueroa, that's not why you charged with obstruction. You charged with obstruction because when the police were looking for those girls, you at first denied even knowing them. And then they received information that you not only had picked them up, as you said, you had taken one of them to a motel.
I've
Now-
never taken anyone to no motels. That's what the police report says. If you're asking me if I learned my lesson, I learned my lesson. Yes, ma'am. No one deserves 18 flat years for a nonviolent crime. It's
Okay.
not right.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Corporal, is there anything you want to add about Mr. Figueroa?
While he's been incarcerated, he has not had a disciplinary record at all.
Good to
Yeah.
hear. Thank you, sir. Mr. Figueroa, is there a brief statement you'd like to make before we vote?
I was here for almost 5 years. For almost a year and a half, I was a tutor. All I do is try to help everyone in the dorm. I preach the word of Christ every day, prayer call every night. I always tell people to do what's right when no one's looking. I'm 45 years old. Yes, I was incarcerated for attempt to obstruct, but the allegations that I'm fighting are all they're fake. It was all made up. I pray every day for the victim. She said that things happened to her. That was not my fault. I'm begging y'all. My mom's about to pass away. So let me go home and be a grandpa to my kids and continue to live this life that I'm living for Jesus.
Okay, well, thank you, sir. We appreciate your remarks. Is the panel prepared to vote? Mrs. Jackson?
Ms. Figueroa, I'm not sure what lessons you've learned, but I'm not convinced that you've learned any at all. You keep referring to this as a nonviolent offense. But, a 17 or 16-year-old girl was subjected to something that person should not have been subjected to.
Well, with all due respect, ma'am, I gave someone a ride. I never gave anyone any drugs.
Figueroa,
Yes, ma'am.
that's a question. She's finishing her vote.
Mr. Figueroa, I don't think you're ready. I don't think you've had any programming that really addresses your underlying issues. You do have pending charges, and those are set for trial shortly. And so my vote today is to deny.
Mr. Rochelle?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Figueroa. When an offender was facing pending charges for child trafficking for sexual purposes, I'm not about to release you. Therefore, I'm going to deny your request.
Mr. Figueroa, my vote is also to deny for the same reasons that's already been stated. So today, sir, your parole's been denied. We wish you well. Good luck to you.
So I have a question.
Concludes our business, I believe, at your facility. We're going to sign out at 9:47.
When you think you've seen it all, you see this. Man, I mean, he was so insistent on his innocence for a second. I was like, maybe he is. I mean, how can you be that dumb at a parole hearing, to take the parole hearing the way he did, to handle it the way he did, if you're just not enraged because of how innocent you are? But man, no, we're going to go over some other reports, and I still don't get how someone can jump into a parole hearing the way he handled it. And then I was shocked when I heard that he had no disciplinary write-ups, because with that attitude and that lack of self-control, how is that possible, frankly? But I think it only re-solidifies the fact that he probably is who he is, because it's those kinds of people with those kinds of offenses that don't get write-ups for some reason. It was interesting. Richard put notes on this specific case and said, for what he's done, it's strange that, in so many words, that he's that he basically said it's the second time that he saw someone with an obstruction charge in lieu of the terrible things he's charged with. But it turns out, and Richard doesn't miss anything. But so I was curious too, and it turns out he still needs to go to trial for it, right? So they got him on the one obstruction charge just to keep him there long enough, I guess. It's quite interesting how they did that. So Louisiana State Police Troop N responded to a call on February 2nd at the Sheraton Hotel on Canal Street. When troopers arrived, they found that one of the subjects they were interviewing was a missing 16-year-old girl. The juvenile was listed as a runaway in our computer system. Through interviews, troopers found the juvenile had been beaten, drugged, sexually assaulted, and pimped out by several different men in the past several days. Troopers immediately notified the Louisiana State Police Bureau of Investigation Special Victims Unit, who arrived and assumed the lead in the investigation. The juvenile was taken to local hospital for medical evaluation and reunited with her family. You know, you run away at 16, you think you're going to have an adventure, and then that's what happens. It's just a nightmare. As detectives from Special Victim Unit continued their investigation, they identified 3 suspects from St. Tammany Parish who were involved in the juvenile sex trafficking. All he learned, all he learned was to not give someone a ride and to not be too kind to people. What a clown. Detectives began working closely with St. Tammany Parish Sheriff's Office, who were actively searching for a runaway 17-year-old identified through coordinated detective suspects. Figueroa and Rudolph were both identified as individuals who drugged the juvenile with Xanax, opioids, and other narcotics, sexually assaulted her while she was incapacitated, and beat her. Mears was identified as attempting to recruit the juvenile into prostitution. Wow. On February 4th, all 3 suspects were located in St. Tammany Parish. Arrest warrants were obtained, and they were booked in St. Parish Jail for trafficking of child sexual purposes, second-degree sexual assault, and felony carnal knowledge of a juvenile. Mears was booked for trafficking. Louisiana State Police Bureau of Investigation Special Victims Unit, Federal Bureau of Investigation, continuing investigation, additional arrests are forthcoming. That's what he learned, though. I learned not to be a good guy. They kept saying this for 5 years for a non-violent crime. It's like, you know, they 5 years he served. They gave him what, 15 or 17 years. I mean, they threw the book at him. They basically were saying, we don't believe you for 1 second. You're not remorseful, and we are going to make sure that you are locked up for a long time. And then he's going to face this in trial. And man, can you, with 3 people, you know, you're going to have 1 person or 2 people take the stand against you, right? He's still insisting on his innocence, so he's probably not going to testify on the state. I'm just guessing here, but if I had to guess, he's going to go in for a long time because they're probably going to get someone to testify against him, just to guess. Man, if Richard can find info on his trial somehow, I would love to cover him and watch his downfall. But as he said, guilty until proven innocent. I mean, innocent until proven guilty. I mean, the truth is, the system is kind of weird where you are kind of guilty until proven innocent. But in this case, that's not true. I mean, he's guilty. He was found guilty by jury for obstruction. Here's another article Richard found. They have a lot of evidence against him. This is for tattooing them. They tattooed her face. One of the victims, age 16, was recovered from New Orleans hotel February, having allegedly been beaten, assaulted, drugged by several male perpetrators. Another girl, age 17, was also rescued after having been repeatedly pimped out. John allegedly gave her tattoos, including one in her left forearm and another below the left eye. The words "numb" etched into her flesh. Court records indicate that 2 other men identified have been arrested and faced charges of trafficking children. They yeah, he's what a parole hearing. You know, I do feel bad for him. All he did was give them a ride. That's all he did. I don't believe it for 1 second, and neither did the board. That guy is just, there's something I think very wrong with him. And that's what it's like, how did he get no write-ups? How do you show up to your parole hearing and act like such a, like with, it seems no self-awareness and no tact, like that was gonna work, to insist on your innocence, to call that was gonna work, to yell at Miss Jackson the way you were yelling. Gosh, man, she handled it like only Miss Jackson could. It was great. And if we do get more information on this, we'll share it with you. Maybe I'll, if Richard can find info on the case, I can put it up on the second channel, Man Do 2. If you're not familiar with it, check it out. It posts things outside of Louisiana on that channel, outside of the parole hearings. But with that, I'll let you go.